Our group decided to research the impact of inner speech on anxiety and self-criticism levels. Looking at previous research, looking into specifically anxiety and self-criticism, for anxiety we found in Moffat et al. That individuals with higher levels of inner voice were associated with negative and self-referential thoughts, showing us that individuals who have higher inner voice had higher rates of thinking negatively and constantly thinking, like overthinking about yourself. Salas et al. Showed us that individuals with high levels of anxiety showed high rates of overly evaluative internal voice. So that's that overthinking thing again, overly thinking, evaluating your actions, which is considered an anxiety symptom. Wren et al. Showed us that higher rates of individuals with anxiety were found to also have high levels of inner voice. And then looking at self-criticism, Wren et al. Also showed that self-criticism seemed to go hand in hand with anxiety levels, showing us that self-criticism may be a symptom of anxiety. Bastian et al. Found that higher levels of inner voice led to higher levels of introspection, both negative and positive. So that's thinking about things that you've done before in the past. Could also be considered self-criticism, this negative thought of how you reflect on yourself negatively. So obviously for the method, we did the survey from class. We looked at the anxiety levels through the GAD-7 survey, and then we looked at levels of self-criticism through the STS, and we compared them to the surveys about inner voice through the VISC, the Nevada Inner Experience Survey, and the IRQ. For results, we were looking at the question revolved around unsymbolized thinking and then compared that to the question about self-criticism. So looking at the Nevada Inner Experience Survey and then the STS, we found that high levels of unsymbolized thinking, which is representing a lower inner voice, showed lower levels of self-criticism. So you can see that in this graph, it's showing us a negative correlation between the two. Similarly, looking at self-criticism and condensed thinking, we can see that the condensed thinking question was from the VISC, and then self-criticism was from the STS. This showed us that higher levels of condensed thinking, which represented lower inner voice, showed us lower levels of self-criticism. So, in turn, showing us that lower level or higher levels of inner voice would give us higher levels of self-criticism. So this is showing us this negative correlation between the low inner voice and self-criticism. Then looking at simply just inner speech versus self-criticism, this was found in the IRQ survey, showed us that higher level of inner voice showed higher level of self-criticism. That is that positive correlation there. And then looking at anxiety, we looked at the inner speech question versus the GAD-7 anxiety scale. It showed us that although this correlation was slight, it was only a 0.1 correlation, it showed that higher levels of inner voice showed higher levels of anxiety. So there's that positive correlation going on there. So in conclusion, this shows us that higher levels of inner speech may not directly be correlated with high anxiety. As we saw in the last one, it was only a slight correlation between anxiety and high levels of inner speech. However, this could be a predictor that individuals who have low levels of inner speech may have better protections against anxiety-producing behaviors, this being self-criticism being one of them, as we talked about in the background information. So this tells us that although individuals who have higher levels of inner speech show high levels of self-criticism, doesn't necessarily mean that is associated directly to anxiety, but it could be a modulating factor. And yeah, that's it.